now we're going to talk about what does breathing look like when it gets to the latest stages of labor. So labor goes early labor, active labor, and then when you are 8 to 10 centimeters dilated, the last phase of labor, the final push of labor before pushing starts, that's called transition. And I want to talk a little bit about what do we do with our breath during transition. And then we're going to talk about what do we do with our breath during pushing. And there are some similarities here. So during this series, we have talked about using basically the same pattern of breath. And it's the easiest one to remember. It's a nice long inhale and a nice, really slow, long exhale. And it's not, some people, use different patterns. I love just a long, slow, long, slow in, long, slow out, because it's super easy to remember. It's very easy to practice. It's very easy to go to, and it is so powerful in labor. Now, transition is where we have our contractions coming close together and they're long. And a common transition pattern of labor is that a contraction starts, it goes for 2 full minutes, and then it has maybe a minute of rest, 30 seconds of rest, and then it starts again. So they're quite close together, long contractions. And then the contractions themselves are usually fairly intense. Now, the thing that makes transition different from early labor and active labor, but mostly early, is that it's usually a lot shorter. Now, if you have an epidural, we did talk about using the breath for epidurals and how you can do that a few days ago. So great. What I'm talking about with transition is where you are actually working through these contractions. So whether you have an epidural that's not working well, or you don't have an epidural, or you're really working through the contractions, I will say that I have seen that the breath often gets shorter, that the pace can pick up in breathing. And the real thing that I like to tell people is that when you are using your breath for early labor, you're using it for active labor, you're developing a routine, a system with dealing with it, that by the time transition hits, it is likely just locked in a pattern that works for you. And most likely you're not going to have to think about it. With the exception that some people, as labor ramps up quickly, they have a tendency to hold their breath. So holding your breath can be a thing that happens in transition because things are so strong and so intense that they hold their breath. Partners, this is a great time to, look for breath holding, make sure you're using those skills we learned actually back in day 2 of the class, where you can do a big blowout and, remind your partner that they're holding their breath without saying it out loud, but just breathing alongside is a great way just to, clue her in that she's holding her breath. But so really what I want to say in transition, using your breath, is trust yourself that you have likely developed by this part of labor a really good pattern of your breath. So it's still a foundation, it's still a core, but it's probably something at this stage you're probably not even thinking about because it's so locked in that you have, you've gone through so many contractions that it's already in there. Okay, here's what I see with pushing, and I remember feeling it myself as well, is that pushing, if you feel the urge to push, so if you're unmedicated or if your epidural is such that you start feeling an urge to push, it's sometimes like tricks your brain a little bit, that you think you have to kind of work through it, that you think you have to sort of breathe through those urges. But when it is a true urge to push, then it usually feels better to go with that urge. Now, there's of course exceptions. If your cervix is not fully dilated to 10, then you wouldn't want to start pushing because that can lead to other issues. But when it is time to push, you don't want to breathe through the pushing feeling. Though a lot of people do, because it's what the contraction comes and you might be feeling an urge to kind of go with your body and bear down, but your brain might be going, okay, long breath in, long breath out. So that's what I wanted to mention, is that pushing using the breath during pushing, it's going to look totally different. And what I really encourage you to do is to tap into what you're feeling in your body during pushing. Sometimes we have providers that encourage like taking a deep breath in and then holding your breath and bearing down. And sometimes they'll count to 10 or something like that. That is an okay strategy if you want it. Some people don't want that strategy and want to go with their natural pushing instinct. And if you have that natural urge to push, I do recommend that you tell your providers, I don't need to be coached. I'm feeling this. I can do this. If I'm not doing this well, let me know, but I want to go with what my body says. Because a lot of times, if we can follow our body's lead here, then pushing is a lot more successful for us. So breathing during pushing has a lot to do with how you're feeling. Some people like to hold their breath in to push. Some people like to do a small, slow breath out while they're bearing down. Some people like to make noises, more of like a guttural sort of grunting type noise, low noise when they push. But just breathing in and trying to breathe it all out and deny that urge, that's not going to be effective pushing. So we do have to kind of switch off that breathing through the pain, breathing through the uncomfortable sensation, and switch back into our body and how to go with that feeling that we're feeling, or be directed if that's what we choose as well. And it can take a little moment. We've been going maybe 18 hours with that long, slow in and long, slow out. And we've been practicing and we're so great at it. So sometimes it takes a little bit to like turn your brain on to like, okay, we're in a new phase of labor and we are going to, need to tap into this feeling and go with it and practice a different kind of breath as we push. So I also want to encourage you during your pushing phase it's often a longer phase. So then a lot of times we think, it can be an hour, it can be several hours to push, and not to feel rushed and to really kind of develop your own pushing rhythm. Sometimes it can feel really rushed when pushing starts because the room sometimes fills up with more activity. The labor and delivery nurse gets there. Maybe a baby nurse comes in. Maybe people come in to set up a table for delivery. Maybe the doctor or midwife comes in to check on you, see how pushing is going. Sometimes I think it can feel a little bit like we need to speed it up. But take your time, develop your rhythm, work with your team and really get into that zone of feeling like you have your power behind you and you have, you're in that pushing mode. And if you have the ability, I always also recommend trying different positions to push. So along with trying different breathing techniques when you push, like the slow, steady breath out, the holding the breath and kind of grunting down, bearing down through the contraction, test those out for which one feels best, but also test out some positions, changing positions up in labor or in pushing is also really helpful. Okay, I'm going way down the pushing tangent. Lots more about pushing videos on the channel. So if you have other pushing questions, I love them. Send them my way. Put them in the comments and I'll direct you to more pushing resources. Okay, so here we are. We are time to practice. And I recommend that we do our 30 seconds. We are switching off between me demonstrating and the 30 seconds just to get us in a different time frame. I recommend today, let's do our same cleansing breath to start, 2 breaths where we're doing some progressive relaxation, and then think about either adding one of the layers of either visualization that we learned the other day, vocalization, or rhythm. Okay, so I recommend putting one of those onto your practice today. Okay, let's start with that deep cleansing breath in. And 2 with the progressive relaxation. Okay, now I'm going to put up our 30 seconds. and add your layers, and I'll see you in 30 seconds. How'd it go? I hope that went well and you feel like it was another good day of practice, especially getting that muscle memory of practicing labor setup. Thanks so much for meeting me here today again. If you practiced today, giving you a high five. We've got 2 days left. It's so exciting. 2 days left. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.